However, after the trial court had granted, the vacation bench of the trial court had granted him bail, the CBI had also arrested him. Therefore, he's also been arrested by CBI in a separate, although connected case, but that's technically a separate case. Mr. Kejriwal has initiated proceedings against that also. That is pending and coming before High Court on 17th. So depending on the outcome of the CBI case, his actual release from jail will depend on that. But insofar as ED is concerned, he is no more required to be in custody as per the Supreme Court order in the ED matter. Now, and insofar as Hindi, Mr. Vivek Jain.
देखिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट में हमारी याचिका के अंदर एक ग्राउंड था मेरिट के ऊपर कि ऑन द मेरिट्स इट इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड टू बी अरेस्टेड। दूसरा था ग्राउंड की नेसेसिटी क्या है अरेस्ट की, जरूरत क्या है अरेस्ट की। जरूरत वाला पॉइंट हमने इसलिए रेज किया था क्योंकि इन्फोर्समेंट डायरेक्टरेट के पास एविडेंस बहुत पहले से थे, इसलिए हमने एक क्वेश्चन रेज किया था कि नेसेसिटी ऑफ अरेस्ट की जरूरत कहां से आ गई जब आपके पास एविडेंस बहुत पहले से थे। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने हमारी याचिका पे ये क्वेश्चन कंसीडर किया है कि हाँ, नेसेसिटी ऑफ अरेस्ट शुड हैव बीन कंसीडर्ड। आईओ को कंसीडर करना चाहिए था कि जरूरत है या नहीं है अरेस्ट करने की, और इसी पॉइंट के ऊपर सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने नेसेसिटी ऑफ अरेस्ट के ऊपर की जरूरत थी या नहीं थी, आईओ ने अपनी जो उनका डिस्क्रेशन है सही तरीके से एक्सरसाइज किया है या नहीं किया है, ये सोचते हुए कि जरूरत है या नहीं है, इस क्वेश्चन को उन्होंने लार्जर बेंच के ऊपर रेफर कर दिया है। लार्जर बेंच इसके पैरामीटर्स निकालेगी कि भाई नेसेसिटी ऑफ अरेस्ट का क्या मतलब है और आईओ को क्या क्या सोच के और जरूरत है अरेस्ट की या नहीं है, इसके ऊपर देखकर ही अरेस्ट करना है। अब क्योंकि मामला अब लार्जर बेंच में लंबित हो गया है, इसलिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा है क्योंकि बहुत देर से अनसाइड है, 21 मार्च से वो अंदर है, इसलिए पीएमएलए वाले मैटर के अंदर उन्हें इंटरिम जमानत दी जाती है और पीएमएलए वाले मैटर के अंदर अब अरविंद केजरीवाल को बेल मिलेगी। एज फार एज सीबीआई इज कंसर्न, सीबीआई का मैटर अभी भी लंबित है, उसके अंदर हमारी याचिका हाईकोर्ट के अंदर अभी पेंडिंग है जो 17 तारीख को आ रही है। उस पर डिपेंड करेगा कि वो एक्चुअल में केजरीवाल साहब बाहर आएंगे या नहीं आएंगे। एज फार एज पीएमएलए इज कंसर्न, द मैटर इज ओवर। As far as his interim bail is concerned, he is out on bail. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, we have Ashok Bagaria, my colleague, joining us to fill us on the latest. Ashok, we understand that Kejriwal has been granted interim bail, but he will remain in CBI custody. What does this mean? Can you help it break it down for a viewer, sir?
Well, actually, the big news which is emerging from the Supreme Court at this hour is the fact that the Supreme Court has granted interim bail to the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the Delhi liquor policy scam case. But the important fact here is that despite interim bail being given to Arvind Kejriwal will remain behind bars because he's in CBI's custody in the same matter. So basically what had happened was after the probe into the Delhi liquor policy scam, there were 2 cases registered against Arvind Kejriwal, one by the Enforcement Directorate for the money laundering case and the second by the CBI, which is a regular criminal case. So what has really happened was that Arvind Kejriwal had filed a petition in the Supreme Court challenging the legality and constitutionality of his arrest by the Enforcement Directorate in the money laundering case. Today, the Supreme Court had said that, look, we are not adjudicating on the larger issue whether the legality and the constitutionality of the arrest was correct or not, but we are looking at a larger question whether there was a need and necessity to arrest Arvind Kejriwal in this case, and whether the need and necessity principle can be introduced into section 19, which deals with the power of ED to arrest a person. Now, at the moment, section 19 reads that there has to be reason to believe and there has to be sufficient material in possession of the investigating officer to arrest a person. However, the court recognized the fact that, look, the need and necessity of arrest is also a very important facet because it deals with the personal liberty of an individual, and this is a thing which has to be looked by the larger bench. But considering the fact that Arvind Kejriwal has been behind bars for more than 90 days, he should be released on interim bail, because now the Chief Justice of India would be constituting a larger bench, which could be of 3 judges or 5 judges, to look into this point of law, whether the need and necessity principle or doctrine can be introduced into section 19. So at the moment what we have is some sort of a partial relief for Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, who has been granted interim bail by the Supreme Court in the ED case. But as far as the CBI case is concerned, he continues to be in the custody of the CBI and he will not be released. His bail plea for CBI is coming up for hearing on July 17th, and that will be the day which will be interesting to see that how the court, the Delhi High Court, takes a view on that particular matter. One important aspect also which the Supreme Court dealt with was a question which was raised during the course of the hearing against Mr. Kejriwal, saying that considering that he's a sitting chief minister and continues to be behind bars, he should step down as the chief minister of Delhi. However, the Supreme Court said that we are not going to get into that question. We leave it to the conscience of Mr. Arvind Kejriwal to decide whether he wants to continue as the chief minister of Delhi or whether he wants to step down. So all in all, there is a huge relief for Arvind Kejriwal, considering that he was arrested by the Enforcement Directorate on March 21st, 2024, just on the threshold of the 18th Lok Sabha elections. And it was at that point in time that Arvind Kejriwal had filed a petition, first in the Supreme Court, then the matter was referred back to the Delhi High Court, challenging his arrest by the Enforcement Directorate. While the Delhi High Court in April had passed a judgment upholding the legality of his arrest by the Enforcement Directorate, saying that the Enforcement Directorate had shown sufficient material to be in its possession, which link Arvind Kejriwal and Aam Aadmi Party to the alleged kickbacks paid by the Southern Group for tinkering the liquor policy in the national capital. The court had also said that the statements of the approver which have been challenged by Arvind Kejriwal amounts to raising questions on the judicial process, and hence it cannot be allowed by an accused to raise questions on the judicial process. So on these grounds, the Delhi High Court had upheld the legality of arrest of Arvind Kejriwal. However, against that order, Arvind Kejriwal came to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court heard arguments on both sides by Mr. Kejriwal, and the Enforcement Directorate reserved the verdict on May 17. And after May 17, the Supreme Court had actually gone into a summer break and could not deliver the verdict. And the court has convened after the summer break on July 8th. And just 4 days later, after the summer break, the Supreme Court has delivered its verdict, saying that as far as the questions of law are concerned, they are referring those questions to a larger bench. But considering the fact that Arvind Kejriwal has been behind bars for more than 90 days, he should be released on bail, because once the constitution of a larger bench will take time, and even the constitution bench will take time to consider the matter, and Arvind Kejriwal cannot be allowed to continue in jail. But as I was saying in the beginning, this does not mean that granting of interim bail by Supreme Court would allow Arvind Kejriwal to walk free or walk out from the Tihar jail. He will still continue, because there is another case by the CBI in the Delhi liquor policy scam, in which he's been arrested and is in the custody of the CBI. So until and unless he gets a bail in the CBI case, Arvind Kejriwal will not be able to walk out of the Tihar jail.
Was Ashok Bagaria, filling us on the latest with what has happened with Arvind Kejriwal. Remember, he has been granted interim bail, but he's still in CBI custody. And with that, let's take a short break. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
'24 sees India's hottest May in 36 years.
Heat waves are becoming stronger.
Heat wave kills at least 56 in India. Nearly 25,000 fall ill.
Working in the heat is impossible to survive that heat. for a long term.
Indian cities aren't even cooling at night.
People who are not even getting 5 sips of water now.
It's so hot that even ACs are exploding.
This is a health emergency.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
This is News9 Live, India's only digital exclusive live stream. For the early adopters, bringing you the news 24/7. For the smart audiences on the smartest TVs. News9 Live. Stream now on your smart TVs.
At least 121 people died in a stampede during a religious gathering in Hathras, Uttar Pradesh. But this is hardly the first incident of its kind for the country. In fact, India has seen over 20 different such incidents in the last 2 decades. But do you know what to do should you find yourself in one? Here's how to survive a stampede. This is what happens in a stampede. One single push, a small shove, can trigger a human wave that can crush anyone. The solution is to create a stable space. If your feet are set apart and your arms in front of you, it can cushion the impact and reduce the chances of injury. The main killer, though, is the possibility of being crushed. Postmortems of Hathras victims revealed injuries to the ribs and asphyxiation as the cause of death. Survival here depends on you curling up in a fetal position and protecting the vulnerable parts of the body. To sum it up, try to stay standing. If you fall, curl up and protect yourself. Stay calm and stand up as soon as you can.
When we talk about India, unfortunately the country has the highest burden of road crash fatalities.
तो लगभग 76% लोग pedestrians और two-wheeler वाले हैं जिनकी डेथ हुई है. While the highways are getting better in India, the local roads, the city roads, the town roads, these need to be improved.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
20,000 people dead and counting. What's happening in the United States of America is unprecedented. You will have to pay for this.
Delhi University there rejects law faculty proposal to teach Manusmriti. Important RSS meeting in Ranchi ahead of upcoming assembly elections. All eyes on the meeting. Karnataka Chief Minister calls meeting after Kaveri panel orders flow of water for Tamil Nadu. United States President Joe Biden mixes up name at campaign meet amid calls that he should pull out of race, ends up calling Vice President Kamala Harris Donald Trump. To face key confidence vote today. CAPFS reaffirms 10% quota for Agniveers. A very warm welcome to all. You're watching News 9 with me, Neha Bhan. The Supreme Court on Friday referred the plea of Delhi Chief Minister and Aam Aadmi Party national convener Arvind Kejriwal challenging his arrest and subsequent remand in the excise policy-linked money laundering case to a larger bench and granted him interim bail till the matter is decided by the larger bench. However, this does not mean he will walk free. He will continue to remain in CBI custody despite the interim bail in ED case. The Apex Court had on the 17th of May, they reserved its verdict on Kejriwal's plea challenging his arrest and subsequent remand in the money laundering case. While Arvind Kejriwal called his arrest in the money laundering case illegal and misuse of the power by the investigating agency, the ED called Kejriwal as the kingpin and key conspirator of the alleged excise policy scam. We have, in fact, right in the studios with me, I have my colleague Ashok Bagaria. Ashok, a very good morning to you. You know, Kejriwal has been arrested in the liquor policy case and he has been in jail since March 2021. What does this interim bail mean for Arvind Kejriwal? For one, it means he still cannot walk free.
Well, the way I look at it, it's a partial relief for Arvind Kejriwal, who's been struggling to get out of the bail and the money laundering case for the last 90 days. Now it's actually been more than 90 days. So what has really transpired in the Supreme Court today is that the Supreme Court has delivered a verdict in the case where they have said that Arvind Kejriwal is granted interim bail in the money laundering case where he was arrested by the Enforcement Directorate on March 21st earlier this year. Besides that, on the questions of law, the two-judge bench of Justice Khanna and Justice Dipankar Datta have referred the matter to a larger bench. Now, what exactly have they referred to the larger bench is an interpretation of Section 19 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Now, this act, or rather this Section 19, has come under attack in recent times because Section 19 has been invoked by the Enforcement Directorate to arrest a lot of people, high-profile people in the recent past. And according to Section 19 as it stands of today, it permits the investigating officer of Enforcement Directorate to arrest any person if the IO has reason to believe and there is sufficient material in possession of the IO to arrest the accused. Now, these are the two grounds on which the ED can arrest an accused. But importantly, what had happened was then when this petition by Arvind Kejriwal was filed in the Supreme Court. Arvind Kejriwal had attacked his arrest on two grounds. The first was the timing of arrest, and the second, the need and necessity of arrest. On the first bit, Arvind Kejriwal had said that, look, he is a victim, or rather a victim of political witch hunt, because he was arrested on March 21st, 2024, just on the threshold of the 18th Lok Sabha elections. So his argument was that he was being arrested to keep him out of the electoral campaigning politics. The second thing Arvind Kejriwal had raised was that, was there actually a need and necessity to arrest him, considering that there were 9 summons that had been sent to him by the Enforcement Directorate, and he had responded to each and every one of them. So now he had pushed in the Supreme Court. Arvind Kejriwal's lawyer, Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, had pushed this argument on the need and necessary doctrine, that you have to see that whether there is actually the need and necessity to arrest an accused person by the Enforcement Directorate. So what the Supreme Court has said, that we are not looking into the need and necessity doctrine, but what we are doing is we are referring this question to a larger bench, and the larger bench will decide whether this need and necessity doctrine can be introduced in section 19, which only says that there has to be reason to believe and sufficient material in possession of the IO to arrest. Now the court says that the need and necessity doctrine has to be looked into, because ultimately at the end of the day, it is about the personal liberty of an accused, which is more sacrosanct. So the question has been referred to a larger bench. The Supreme Court says the constitution of a bench will take time. The consideration of the legal matter by the larger bench will also take time. But at the same time, looking at the fact that Mr. Arvind Kejriwal has been in jail for the last 90 days, they have directed him to be released on interim bail, number one. Number two is a very important observation. Now, during the course of the argument, there were some who raised the point that, look, here we have a sitting Chief Minister of Delhi who is in jail, and he is running the government from the jail, and he should be asked to step down by a judicial order. However, the courts kept away from entertaining such petitions, and rightly the Supreme Court also in this particular case said that, look, we are not going into the issue whether Arvind Kejriwal, who's been behind bars and continues to be behind bars in the case, whether he should step down or not. We leave it to Arvind Kejriwal to take a call depending on his conscience.
Right. Ashok, continue to stay with us. In fact, we have several reactions also coming in. Let's cut across, and then we'll come right back to Ashok and discuss this in depth. Stay with us.
Arvind Kejriwal ji has been granted interim bail by Supreme Court today, and he has been granted interim bail, and the matter has been referred to the larger bench on the issue of whether the arrest was needed or not needed, and about the section 19 interpretation, etc. The matter has been referred to the larger bench.
Back, the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court bench has pronounced its judgment. We obviously don't have a copy of the detailed judgment yet, which will be uploaded in the course of the day. I am just giving a briefing based on what the court observed during the oral reading out of parts of the judgment. The court has examined aspects of section 19 of requirement of arrest under the PMLA. There were certain legal issues which arose from that, which especially in the context of whether there is a requirement of necessity of arrest in addition to the requirement of section 19 which are stipulated in that section. Those aspects the court has referred to a larger bench, and that outcome we will have to await. However, in the interim, the court has observed that Mr. Kejriwal has already undergone substantial amount of incarceration, and therefore directed.
Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, there in fact has been granted interim bail by the Supreme Court in ED case, and we continue our discussion on the same. Ashok, my next question that I would like to ask you is, what are the provisions of the CBI for which Arvind Kejriwal will have to seek separate bail?
Well, if you look closely, that there are two cases which emerge out of the Delhi liquor policy scam.
Right.
One is the enforcement, which is being investigated by the Enforcement Directorate, which is purely a money laundering case. The other limb of the case is being investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation, which is a criminal case which pertains to taking bribes by the southern group, by Arvind Kejriwal and Aam Aadmi Party for tinkering with the excise policy in Delhi. So as far as the CBI is concerned, the CBI is probing the criminal aspect of this case, whereas the ED is probing the money laundering aspect of it. Now, it was initially that Arvind Kejriwal was arrested by the Enforcement Directorate in connection with the money laundering case, and it was only at a subsequent date when Arvind Kejriwal was in Tihar jail that the CBI took his custody and formally arrested him in the bribery case. And in fact, right now, there are investigations which are going on by the CBI, and Arvind Kejriwal will have to await the result of his bail plea in the Delhi High Court, which is going to come up on July 17th. What is important is that earlier, interestingly, this bail petition was moved by Arvind Kejriwal in the CBI case, which was rejected. Now it's before the Delhi High Court. We'll have to very closely wait and see what happens on July 17th. If he is actually been given bail on July 17th, then he can actually move out of Tihar jail, because there are two cases, as I said earlier. One is the ED case in which he already has bail. One is this CBI case in which he does not have bail. So once he gets bail in the CBI case, only then will he be able to physically move out of Tihar jail and resume his duties as the Delhi Chief Minister. One very interesting thing in the meantime, Neha, is the fact that we'll have to wait and see that on what conditions has Arvind Kejriwal been granted interim bail in the ED case. Because I say this because earlier also Arvind Kejriwal was granted interim bail by the Supreme Court for campaigning purposes, and at that particular point in time the Supreme Court had laid down conditions that he would not go to his office in the Delhi Secretariat and also not try to reach out to witnesses, tamper with evidence, or try to influence the witnesses. So we'll have to really wait and see that if he is actually released on bail, what are the bail conditions? Will those bail conditions hamper his functioning as the Chief Minister of Delhi, or whether he can continue to resume his functions as before March 21st, 2024.
Right. Ashok, continue to stay with us. In fact, we slip on a quick break now. News and updates continue on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
The confidence is certainly back in the market.
Do tighten your seat belt so that you can withstand volatility.
I have one humble request to all the viewers of News9 is that please don't go, there will be a lot of choppiness, there will be a lot of volatility. Look at long term, don't look at short term. Buy quality, don't buy quantity, and wish you all the very best.
हमारा टाइम आ गया है और रहेगा.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?